remind people that we are being live streamed. We have got two important people this morning. We've got Hamish Smith from the Youth Council, his first meeting with us. Welcome, Hamish, and Adam as well. And no doubt the councillors on either side of you will keep you in line as to where we're at. So welcome to you. Apologies, we have an apology from our Mayor who is unable to make it today. Would someone like to move that we receive moved Councillor Noonan to seconder? Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Matheson, all those in favour? Aye, against? Carried, thank you. The order of business is confirmed as per the agenda. Interests, I would just remind everyone to keep their interests registers up to date. And please identify any conflicts. Councillor Ackland.
Sorry, I should have said just the absences. I'll have to step out for a short time at 10 o'clock, but I'll be back after.
All right, thank you. Any other attendance matters? No. All right, thank you. There is no public forum this morning. So we'll go now to item 5, which is the confirmation of the minutes, which is pages 7 to 11. Just give you a moment to quickly look through that. Would someone then like to move that that's a true and correct record of what occurred? All right. Moved Councillor Rutledge. Do we have a seconder? We're looking for a seconder to confirm the minutes. Councillor Matthew? No, you weren't here. Do we have someone who... Thank you, Councillor Laurie. All those in favour? Please aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. There will be no chairperson's report. So now we go on to item 7, Great Taste Trail, Council Circle to Hunanui Beach Holiday Park. This is pages 12 to 24, and we have Mr. Petheram to present his report. Are there any changes or alterations, Mr. Petheram?
No, Mr. Chair, the report is shown.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, councillors, I assume that you've read the report. The conclusion at the end, the Beach Road option is the preferred option of the Nelson Tasman Cycle Trails Trust. It's supported by Bicycle Nelson Bays, not opposed by Nelson Bays Football. And this route is likely to cause less conflict than the Modellers Pond option. Observation of the car parking use over the last 6 months indicates that the removal of 36 car parks of a total of 65 is not significant and is outweighed by the benefit of recreational cycling in the region. Any questions?
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I read it, I was a bit concerned about the loss of 36 car parks, which is probably the thing that most people would pick up. And I made a couple of calls, and the people that I spoke to seemed in the area seemed to think it was okay. But I'm just looking at page 18, and I'm wondering if the residents have actually been advised, or if there any conversations have been had with the residents, and would they get their feedback?
Mr. Chair, councillors, yes, the Great Taste Trail visited the residents in the area and spoke to most of them, either the owners of the property or the people, the tenants, and the support was there. There was no significant objections.
A follow-up then, Mr. Chair. I'd just suggest that in the level of engagement that those are noted, because that's something that I look at and it's very helpful and it was a concern. So it would be good if we could have the engagement that's actually happened recorded.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Councillor Rutledge.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, 6.12, consultation with the Turner Business Association. Can you outline what consultation has gone on there and if that's an official position of the Turner Business Association?
Sure, the initial discussions were undertaken with a representative of the Business Association, and that was John Gilbertson, who gave the views. To an extent, they were personal views. I then followed up with the chair of the president of the Business Association, who was Rob Stevenson. I met with Rob. I then forwarded him copies of the proposed options and then phoned him and discussed it with him.
And so what was Rob's views there, and has there been the opportunity for that to go to a meeting of the Tahuna Business Association and for them to endorse the plan?
Rob's views were of the 4 options. He agreed that option A was not appropriate. That's the option to the north of Natureland. He felt that, he agreed that option C, which would go through the sports field, was also not appropriate, as it would reduce opportunities for sport in future. He could understand the concerns that had been raised by John Gilbertson on the Modler's Pond option. That's the west of Modler's Pond. His preference was to go for option D, and we talked through the loss of car parking. He expressed initially some concern about loss of car parking. When I went through response from the local residents and from football, who are the main users of that site, he wasn't concerned. He agreed with John Gilbertson that narrowing that portion of Beach Road could have an effect on slowing traffic through that area. So overall, he was supportive of the proposal. I don't believe that it's been to a meeting of their association.
So, and look, I've had a conversation with Mr. Stevenson this morning, and it's certainly, the wording in 6.12 doesn't seem to quite line up with that conversation, and certainly that it's any kind of official position of the Business Association to have endorsed the plan. So, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure how we deal with that, but I guess based on the conversation I've had with the chair of that association this morning, that seems like we've perhaps overstated the position of the Tahuna Business Association there.
All right, thank you. I think the fact that we have in fact spoken to 2 of them individually and received their opinions is certainly helpful. But we could, if you wanted to, I see no reason why we couldn't note that we understand that it hasn't been to one of their meetings. And I think that would be fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously the officer's report here, but yeah, it might be a bit far to say that the plan's been endorsed by the Tahuna Business Association.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, it's a pretty straight up and down report when you've got pretty much everyone saying this is the option we want to go for. But just thinking a little bit laterally, just want to check this out. The Modler's Pond option, with the utmost respect for the efforts of the Chair of Works Infrastructure and others to preserve the Modler's Pond, I think there's still something of a question mark. We haven't decided, definitely with any finality what is going to happen in terms of the future of the Modler's Pond. That decision may not be that far away, but some people might wonder, if the Modler's Pond doesn't stay in its current form, would that change things at all in terms of the attractiveness of that option?
Mr. Chair, councillors, I really don't think it would. The modellers, at the end of the day, they would go along with that as an option past the Modler's Pond. The concern was more pedestrians moving through that area rather than the modellers themselves. So whatever solution we come up with for the Modler's Pond, I think would be compatible with the route through there.
sorry, would be compatible or incompatible?
It would be compatible.
Compatible, okay. I thought we weren't doing the Models Pond.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
But it's not a route that would be posed as blatantly as option A or option C. It would be our second choice option.
Okay, through the chair, I'm just wondering if there's a potential future where we go, oh, it would have been great if we'd put it down there. Now that the Models Pond is a estuary, it would have been a great place to put it.
The pathway structure, when it's in, will be in anyway, and in future we have the opportunity to reassess, and it would only be a matter of adjusting the signs and perhaps formalising that route through there.
That's good too. And also through the chair, I'm sorry if I've missed it, but what would the construction of the actual path look like? What would it be made of?
It varies. There are sections of the path, for example, when we're going around the camp, there'll be sections of gravel path. Further back towards the BMX track, there'll actually be boardwalk, which will be the reinforced fibre open square sections. When we're going through Tahuna Beach Reserve, it'll be either the existing 3 metre concrete path. Along the Beach Road section, we'll just make use of the existing seal. It'll be with the barriers along the side, but it'll be quite simple. So it'll be a variety of path services.
And last question for now anyway, through the chair, when you say a barrier along Beach Road, what do you envisage?
It will be a series of bollards and markings, and it will separate the cars and will allow for a space for door opening, and the actual cycling will be separate.
Yes, the only comment that I would make relating to, excuse me, the Modellers Pond area is that there's certainly, as Mr. Petheram says, a huge amount of pedestrian activity, young mums with prams and things of that nature, and also the railway crossings are complicated. Should there be any change in the format of the pond, that track will always remain in place. There's a lot of time and effort's gone into that. So certainly there's that aspect of it. Councillor Rutledge.
Thanks. Just a couple more questions from me. The Great Taste Trail route is designed to be very much the scenic route and make the most of the assets in the region. Option D strikes me as the least of that of all three, all four options. Can you comment on the character of this and how it enables people to engage with the Tahuna Beach Reserve compared to the other options?
Mr. Chair, Councillor, that's fair comment. Option A was ruled out because of the numbers of people there and the tight space. Option C was ruled out because it would negate the future benefits from the sports field. So between the Modellers Pond option and this option, the Modellers Pond would be more attractive, but that was the option that we had response back that it was likely to cause potential conflict.
Okay, and then last one from me is where at the bottom, where we're starting to come towards Beach Road, it crosses a raised table. Is that the intention?
That's correct.
The existing path?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the draft proposal for the Tahuna route is considering at the moment the raised table. So our path would tie in with that and make use of that table and then go up Waikari Street to the reserve.
Okay, and it I don't know if this is a question you're set up to answer or if one of your colleagues behind you, but are there any additional safety concerns that we have with people obviously turning off Beach Road, which is a 50k an hour zone, and then all of a sudden we're forcing a whole lot more traffic across that raised table. Is there potential for conflict there? That might be reduced if that crossing point was further into the beach reserve where people are more embedded in a slower speed zone.
Councillors, that's not my area of expertise, and I've taken guidance from our transport people on that. You may wish to.
Do we have an opportunity for some advice from staff there?
Sorry, Margaret, would you like the question repeated, or do you understand the question? Okay.
Councillors, it might help if I just say that I've been working with Andy High on this, who's managing the other project, and he feels confident that this solution will tie in well with what they're proposing. And he hadn't raised anything, but that's not my area of expertise.
Sure, and I guess the reason for the question is that we've asked, I guess, those same questions of, could we have a raised table and a cycle preference route through places like Beatson Road, and have been told no because of the closeness of that crossing to Waimea Road. We couldn't do this. Now, I do appreciate there's less traffic volume here, but still considerable traffic volume. So I'm just wondering what the fundamental differences are that means one's appropriate here and not in another place.
So, Councillor, I can't answer.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll attempt to have an answer to this. So I think the difference between Waimea Road partly was around the speed on Waimea Road at the time that the Beatson Road, the path next to it was built. At that time it was a 70, and currently still is a 70 kilometre an hour zone. But we really do need the design project engineer here to specifically answer the question about Te Hunanui, because I know I'm not quite sure where that has got to with regard to whether it is a raised crossing table or whether the intersection is raised. So we'll have to come back to you, councillors, on that question.
Councillor Barker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andrew, I'm just wondering if you can clarify a little bit for me. In section 6.5, the number of car parks, 65 existing, so this will be taking away more than half of those. Where will the remaining half be?
Mr. Chair, the right angle parks will be removed and they'll be replaced with parallel parks, which is the loss results in the loss of 36 parks. They won't be replaced, but that section of the park, there's not high parking demand most of the time anyway. We're talking about some of those events like Weet-Bix Triathlon and when we have the Relay for Life down there. The rest of the time, those parks are fairly much empty. We did fairly informal observation over a 6-month period and checked them, and most of the time there are only about 11 to 13 parks in use. Right. We've discussed that with the local residents as well, and they didn't have consent.
Okay, and just to follow up on that, I appreciate that the change will be effective from the change from angle to parallel. In the consultation, Twilight Sports, I don't see the other codes that use this area for Twilight Sports, where I just see the place teeming with people, teeming with vehicles. Did you consult the other codes that?
No, we didn't, because that field is only used by football.
But there's the parking needed there. Touch rugby in the next field.
And on the next field.
Yeah, in Twilight Touch Rugby, that whole place is just crammed with vehicles and people.
Councillor, the consideration was the advantages of encouraging cycling through there and the advantages to the region of promoting the Great Taste Trail. and it was felt that those advantages outweighed any inconvenience of occasional parking for some of those other sporting bodies.
As regular weekly events.
Councillors, that section is not as used as the other section of Beach Road east of Waikari Street. That section west of Waikari Street is the demand isn't as great.
Councillor Matheson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This particular subject has been booted from here to heaven and back so many times, I wonder when we're ever going to start the project. That parking that's been taken out of there, I'm very familiar with this part of the road, is mainly used by residents who live on the other side of the road. And they have not utilised the parking that's in front of their premises. So there's always about half a dozen to a dozen cars parked there, and they belong to the people who live on the, what would that be? East side. So there's no disadvantage for them at all, is there? Right. Thank you.
Councillor Laurie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Picking up on Councillor Rutledge's point earlier, which I agree with, about option D, which is the way, I mean, that clearly, with all parties involved, that's the easy way forward. But I sort of think about, when I go riding on the Great Taste Trail, I always try and stop and get great photos of the kids, because it's just such a stunning place to be and you want to share it with the world. And I just don't think there's anywhere along option D that anyone's going to stop to take a photo, which I feel highlights a missed opportunity in this part of Nelson. And so I just want to go back and look at option A, and I've read the report and I know what the concerns are about pedestrians, but I just need to be convinced that the disadvantages of option A clearly outweigh the advantages of option A when it comes to giving people a scenic cycling experience.
Mr. Chair, Councillor, are you talking about option B rather than option A? Option A is to the north of Natureland, and I don't think that's a goer. The congestion through there is too tight. Option B is probably the route that you're considering.
Well, either or.
Yeah, so if we talk about option B, yes, it is more scenic, but we're talking about a distance of only a few hundred metres, and the extent of the trail is many kilometres. So we didn't really consider it was major. Option B, yes, it is scenic, but for quite a short distance. We took into consideration the feedback that we had regarding potential conflict.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Councillor Skinner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and as you're aware with yourself, I've walked those paths, and as you're probably aware, and I spent I'm comfortable with either the red or the blue. What's that? C or D, is it? No, sorry, B. Either B or D I'm comfortable with, and it was that trying to get that good compromise of easy flow without conflict of walkers, etc. Just on that bit coming in, that Hounsell Circle coming down towards Beach Road from Tuna, there's a pathway there, and I'm trying to revisualise that pathway. That's used by walkers as well as cyclists. What's your view on the potential conflict of a width on that? I remember at the time it looked roomy, but then also it was very roomy on the option B side as well.
Mr. Chair, councillors, that section of path, it's 3 metres wide through there.
Yep.
It's reasonably open. It's straight. There are no bends,
Right,
no obstructions.
good visibility, wasn't it? Yep.
I believe it's fine.
And when we are including that, need to be widened a bit, or can it be widened if need be?
And councillors, it could be, but I don't believe it needs to be.
And just to be completely sure on option D, my concern, which I think which you've covered well, is that it didn't impinge on the playing area if we need to develop that further, and not impinging too much on the parking, which it doesn't. So in your final iteration of this, it uses existing seal. It doesn't use any of that grass verge, or do we have to cut back a bit of a grass, or do we need to increase some of the grass?
No, it won't enter onto the playing field at all. It'll touch on the existing grass at the corner of Waikari Street when it links into the other route, but
Otherwise, using the curving that's already there.
yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and the other question, just time, I think we're going over it, probably about the cost, etc. Is there any, when we would build a path, it always seems like very expensive from my point of view. Is there any great expense in what we're doing over and above the others?
Option D would be slightly cheaper than the other options. Well, it would be slightly cheaper than option B.
Thank you.
Councillor Ackland?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you, Andrew. I think I know the answers really. It is that option D gets it going, and we plug through despite perhaps looking at the pictures which look nice for us, not having been involved in the detail, that actually would be nicer going through the park perhaps. But your very clear advice is option D is the one that we need to really get going with, rather than
Councillors, we want to get this program running, and yes, we could struggle on with option B, but there would be opposition to it. I think if you want to get this program up and moving, we particularly want to link the beach camp into it. We want to have it functioning for the summer. The path of least resistance is option D.
and it doesn't, through you, sorry, Mr. Chair, it doesn't close off other options in the future.
It doesn't prevent us moving to option B if we want to in future.
And option, just to be very clear, the option A, which seems to me, looking at the picture, a pretty picture, looks to be the most obvious, but it would involve presumably, judging from what you've been saying, it would involve a massive redesign of the intersections and the roading all through that area.
The problem with option A is that the Natureland fence, the Natureland hedge, the boundary with Natureland, the car park, it's very tight through there, and there's a lot of pedestrians walk through. It's very tight. We ruled that out easily at the beginning.
Okay, no, that's well, we don't know what the future holds, so that's useful. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to move what we've got on the table.
Yes, I think we still have one question first, thank you. Oh, okay.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you for coming back to me. Just hearing a bit of the questions around the table, I do have a question, our classic governance questions of timing, budget and quality. And I haven't got a sense of the costs between these four options. The preferred option is obviously, looking at it from a layperson's point of view, is going to be the most cost effective, but if we went to another option, maybe, I'm hearing B around the table, would that add a lot of cost and time?
It would. Mr. Chair, councillors, it would require the widening of that bridge across the outfall from the Modellers Pond, and it would require some widening of the existing concrete path.
Okay. That is quite helpful, Mr. Peter.
It would also require working in with the modellers on a crossing over the railway. And I've met with the modellers, we've discussed it. They've said that they would work with me if that was the option. But probably most of that cost would probably be borne with the modellers.
Thank you, that helps me quite a lot.
Thank you. I notice that we have Mr. High now in the chamber. Are you in a position where you can perhaps help Councillor Rutledge's query?
Yeah, good morning through the chair. Sorry about my casual attire. So I believe there was a question raised about the intersection of Waikari and Beach Road with regard to the...
Councillor Rutledge could repeat his question to you.
Yes, so the crossing looks to go across the existing raised table that's there,
Yeah.
which is quite close to Beach Road, which is a 50k/h zone that people are turning into. And I guess previously you've been told that sort of priority crossing for cyclists wouldn't be appropriate in, say, Beatson Road. where it seems like there's a similar distance between the main thoroughfare and the crossing point. So just wondering what are the different characteristics that make this option a safe and reasonable solution?
So, through the chair, the plan for the Tahuna Pathways project is for a shared path along the east side of Waikari Street, which then intersects across Beach Road and actually forms a confluence with your option D on your map there. That intersection, Beach Road and Waikari, is proposed to make the whole intersection a raised table intersection. So all 4 legs of those roads will ramp up to a big square raised table. In doing so, that will reduce the speeds for all vehicles approaching that intersection. Hounslow Circle is actually presently 20 kilometres an hour, Beach Road 50, Waikari 50. So it'll just slow all those approach speeds down. Then it's expected that shared path users from the Tahuna Pathways scheme and the Great Taste Trail will then be able to go in different directions across that raised table in a slow speed environment. So actually, option D actually works in really well with our Tahuna Pathways project that we're presently just detail designing.
Okay, so sorry, that just remind me of the timing for that project.
Through the chair, so presently on Ansbrook Drive, we're building the first stage of the Tahuna Pathways project, and we'll have detailed design completed by the end of this financial year for the rest of the scheme, and then for construction next year. So potentially, we could be building, if the consultation goes according to plan, we could be building the rest of the Tahuna Pathways scheme in spring, summer.
Okay. And that shot, from memory, it goes down Beach Road, yeah? So.
The Tahuna Pathways scheme comes off Ansbrook Drive up Parkers Road along Muratai.
Yeah.
And then up Waikari and joins the subject location.
Joins Beach Road and then along to the lights down Beach Road.
No, it's going to terminate at the raised table on Waikari Beach, okay, and then join the existing concrete shared path that your option D then takes towards the beach and then into the...
So the raised table that I was talking about is the one on Hounslow at the moment?
Yeah.
So once all that infrastructure is in place, then that whole area will be such a low speed zone that
it will effectively be a low speed zone.
Any issues there at all?
Yeah, the actual present raised table is, that you rightly state, is about 50 metres from the intersection. We will actually remove that in favour of the raised table intersection crossing in place.
Oh, okay, so you remove that. So what does the crossing look like for the option D pathway then?
It's pretty much just the same, just relocated back slightly towards the intersection so we can incorporate it in the raised table intersection.
Oh, okay, so sorry, so it doesn't look like what we've got on the map here now?
Well, we're still detailed designing the Tahuna Pathways and that whole confluence there, but the plan is not to have, at the moment, not to have our raised table intersection then back down to grade road level and then back over a raised table. It doesn't make any sense. Sure. You might as well just incorporate it all together. It's just a very slight shift of that raised table on Hounslow to incorporate it into our raised table intersection.
Okay, but the short-term solution for this pathway is using the existing infrastructure and the existing raised table, is that correct?
I guess so. I mean, we have to work through the timeline of that whole thing.
Thank you. Any further queries for Mr. High? Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick query. Andrew, you know that I'm keen to see this at the earliest opportunity. And I'm also aware that Tahuna Beach Holiday Park has a strategic plan which has, this portion that I'm going to speak about, has had support from DOC and others. In the future, that strategic plan incorporates utilising the Waimea Inlet attributes as a nature reserve with boardwalks coming up from the camp, and that has had support from DOC and others. So in the future, it could be possible that this cycle trail could go over a boardwalk similar to what's done in the Waimea Inlet in Tasman. Would that be correct?
Councillors, to a degree, We are concerned about future erosion, particularly in storm conditions. So we're looking at where it's safest to install boardwalks, and we've been working with our environmental people and looking at the boardwalk being on the section from probably closest to the entrance to the camp rather than the Parkers Road end. So it's the Parkers Road end we will be keeping that up on the land with a gravel path in case it erodes out. But the area back in the inlet where it's unlikely to be breached, that would be boardwalk and with interpretation, etc. I can explain that to you further later on if you wish.
I think I picked it up, and I think if we keep our options open in the future, who knows what might be possible.
Councillors, we also have to ensure that we don't set up something which is going to be a significant cost for us if erosion occurs around Parkers Road.
Councillor Noonan?
Thank you. I'm talking to my colleague here, the mover and the seconder, if you like. Neither of us were aware of the road being having that raised area at that intersection, and it's not in the report. So on the beach road. So we now hear that there is going to be raised areas all four sides, correct?
No, for Waikiri.
Councillor, we'll have to ask Mr. Hyde to comment on that.
Through the chair, so this is the raised table intersection has been developed as a response to some complaints about speeding on Beach Road and into Waikari, and we're obviously anticipating bringing a whole set of new shared path users into that location, and a best practice design of shared paths, separated cycle facilities and slow speed roading dictates that we need to do something to bring those speeds down in that area. We can't design a facility and present the users with a dangerous road environment. So it's just part of the design process to come up with these solutions.
Right, so through the chair, and then just for clarification, it wouldn't matter whether we were discussing any of these options today, that was still a piece of work that was going to happen. Is that right?
Through the chair, that's correct. The raised table is part of the Tuna Pathways scheme rather than Andrew's Great Taste Trail extension.
Okay, so that helps a lot. And again, I'd say that it's nice when different parts of council talk to each other, and it's good that we talk to this about that today, because we might have made a decision and then found out and gone, oh, that might have changed my mind. So actually, although that piece of work is not, it sort of is connected with this report, but it would have been nice to have just a paragraph at the bottom saying another piece of work unrelated to this decision is happening anyway, because we're looking at it from a totally different view. So I don't think that changes where we're at, but we might want to pause just for a moment just to clarify with the moving and the seconding of this recommendation. If we
Mr. Chair, can I just comment that on 7.2 of our conclusion, the final sentence, we say that the Trust is asked to work with council officers to ensure that this trail integrates with the proposed Te Hunanui Pathways on-road cycle route. So that was to take into account any modifications that this project would take.
Our Chief Executive wants to make a comment.
No, I think Councillor Noonan has covered exactly the point I wanted to make, that what happens at the intersection is a separate process. You're signing off the trail that's shown at the moment. Councillor Rutledge was asking a question about how we would ensure future safety and lower speeds, which we have to do, and Mr. High was pointing out the preferred option at the moment, but there is a whole separate approval process for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, so, so no, thank you for that. So yeah, just get an understanding how that's slowing of Beach Road, so completely clear that regardless if we decided to go with a different option at some stage in the near future, we were going to do something to slow down Beach Road, whether raised or similar in any case.
That's correct, because the Tuna Pathways scheme, where it comes off Waikari, we do need to get those users through to the beach, so it was always part of that design process.
And just to just to take that further with the chair, that's because there's been increased traffic with kids going to school and users. Has that increased over recent times? I mean, the past years we haven't. It seems to work quite well. Not being a resident along there, it seems quite well driving through there without any impediment. But you're always concerned when you're coming up to the reserve area and coming in towards Council Circle. But on that area, but have things changed to push that along?
Through the chair, the hope is that we build our Tahuna Pathways scheme and it will increase usage hugely. We will be providing a direct link through to the beach, and although presently cycling numbers and mobility scooters and children on scooters, they're probably, fairly dissipated through Tahuna scheme, through Tahuna area. The expectation is that.
Thank you for that. So I still very much support what we've got on the table, and it's also quite nice to know that it's a case of that will help with this, but it's also a case of encouraging people to cycle, walk, run, skateboard along that way to get from A to B.
Thank you. I'd also add that last night I had quite a conversation with our mayor when she advised me that she wouldn't be attending, and she's been down there and investigated both during the day and in the evenings, and she's happy to support option D as well. Councillor Matheson?
Yeah, thank you. Mr Chair, I was aware of what you were doing with Waikere Street, but they're probably a good point, David, in here. One of the positives is that Beach Road has become a rat race for people trying to get to town, and I do it. It's easier to get through those Tahuna lights if you shoot down to Beach Road and then turn right and left, and than it is to line up and Tahunui Drive. So the traffic activity down there is, or you might have seen it, Adam, in your walks, has certainly increased dramatically, and this is a method of stop. It's a racetrack in the morning. Who's going to get to those lights first? And they really do motor down there. Not me, but everybody else. So I think that raised platforms actually, it's got a good positive piece of work.
Thank you. There is just one item that hasn't been discussed, and Mr Petheram, if you'd like to give comment about the 50% subsidy that this work attracts.
Yes, councillors, the total cost is approximately 804,000. Council has contributed 402. The remaining 402 is coming from the from MB, Business Investment Enterprise. And that's been confirmed. We're staggering the expenditure over this current financial year and the coming financial year.
All right, thank you. No further questions. We'll now go into debate. Are there any? Councillor Noonan?
Thank you, Mr Chair. As the Deputy Mayor is saying that he's wondering whether this is ever going to get done. Well, hopefully today that we'll be able to move this on and get it done. I think that the officers have obviously had a look at just about everything that you can do apart from somersaults on this particular piece of ground. There's lots of options there, and they've considered them all very well, and I know that some councillors have been out on the ground, and I think that's fantastic as well. I think it's an area that we are very familiar with, being a local playground of Nelson City. Being a girl that was raised here, I certainly went to the beach a lot and used these areas on a regular basis. But I think the biggest thing is that we get this going, because it's well overdue, and I look forward to the completion of something.
Thank you. Would you like to move then?
We've had it moved and seconded.
And you second, okay, yes. Thank you. Yep, all right, so it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Laurie?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Yeah, I support the recommendation as well. The Great Taste Trail is a fantastic asset, and it's one that's used a lot by visitors, but this particular stretch of it will also benefit locals in a big way, because it will just make cycling in and around Tahunanui just that little bit safer, just that more attractive and more appealing. So I think it's a win for our visitors, and it's a win for Tahunanui. And I also like the idea that it's going to increase excitement about the potential to one day be able to ride all the way through there and then get onto a walkway, cycleway and ride around the waterfront into town.
Thank you. Any further question? Councillor Rutledge?
Again, speaking in support of this, I think we've got a solution that, while perhaps a bit compromised in some places, still provides a way forward, an expedient way forward, and I think importantly, because of where the infrastructure is going to need to be built, doesn't really preclude future potential development if things change. So, yeah, looking forward to getting on with this project and happy to support.
All right, thank you. All right, well then, no further discussion or queries or support. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. We now go to item 8.
Go build it. Quick, get on with it. Go Andrew, get out there. Give that man a spade. Mr. Chairman, could you turn your microphone on?
It is on.
It is on? Oh, okay,
yes.
Sorry.
I'll bring it closer. Right, thank you. Thank you for that. Mr. Levertis, would you like to speak to item 8, please?
Through the chair, yes, thank you very much. Mine is just a covering report, and all this is bringing to the Works and Infrastructure Committee the NRSBU asset management plan, and it reflects the...
I wonder if we could pause on the discussion over on the right, thank you.
And it is a procedural item that needs to come to this committee, and it reflects the decisions made following the approval of the business plan. But I'll invite Mr. Don Clifford, the acting GM, to answer any questions. But the business plan requirements have been included in the asset management plan.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Clifford? No, thank you.
So I guess my one question is, are you happy that this management plan delivers to the overall direction of travel and with the visions and priorities that's in Nelson City Council's long-term plan, specifically around our expectations about increasing water quality and looking after our environment?
Through the chair, yes, I am. We put quite a bit of work last year into reviewing the Nelson City Council long-term plan, the environmental aspirations within that plan, and what we were planning to do in the NRSBU. It's all intertwined with our resource consent application for Bell Island facility, and we have basically just put words in here to give more clarity of the actions that we're taking. But a specific example is that we are looking and we'll soon hopefully be implementing a filtration system which will allow us to take the treated wastewater and use it for operations within the site instead of using potable water. That'll have an immediate benefit of reducing how much wastewater goes to sea. So that's a small incremental step, but it will become a great example for us to then use the treated wastewater for other purposes, for example, irrigation later.
Fantastic. So are there any other benefits? I realise that there's been a lot of work going into this, and I think a bit of an opportunity to inform, to highlight that to the meeting, but also the good people in Nelson that indeed we're taking these things quite seriously. So
another example is separate to some other works we were doing. The business unit was granted a resource consent for what we describe as aberrational discharges from the pump stations. So the sewage comes from the catchment and gets into a pipeline that starts roughly at MPI facility and works its way around the coast, Monaco and out to Bell Island. There are a number of pump stations there, and in adverse conditions like big storms, high stormwater flows that get into the sewer, there's potential for overflows of sewer stormwater mix, and we have a consent that has some conditions, and the plan now clarifies that we are taking urgent action to implement those conditions and reduce the possibilities of overflows, and the mitigations if they still happen.
Well done. That's great to hear that that's being responded to. Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Don, just coming back to your new filtering system, which obviously we're talking about grey water. As part of our environment thinking, there is a generating interest in the use of that grey water to either supplement or replace what's being used now that's potable on playing fields and so forth, and I know that Her Worship has been talking to you about this. Are you as a unit giving it extra attention? I mean, I know quite a bit about it, but not only you're right, does it reduce your discharge into the Waimea estuary, but are you looking at wider use of that water?
Absolutely. At a personal level, I'm really keen to, but at a formal level as the General Manager, we are very actively looking at that. We had a committee meeting on the 8th of March very recently, and I had a clear message given to me by that committee: get on with it and make sure we look at ways to reuse the water. The recent droughts, particularly in Tasman District, have highlighted the issue and the potential opportunity.
Just stand that, well, that's excellent. We've been trying to get this off the ground for a few years now, but so when do you think you might be able to come back to this council, Don, and give us an update that's fairly positive as you move forward?
I can give you a brief status update at the moment. We have a plan for a filtration unit, which is about 300,000 Ks to buy. We need to do some enabling works, so we're working our way through where it would sit on the site and that sort of stuff. It's going to be rough order a $500,000 exercise to get it up and running. So we're working on that. I have a workshop that I'm going to be having with the committee to thrash through some intertwined options and make sure we're heading in the direction the committee wants to go. But there's no reason we wouldn't have it up and running before the end of the year.
Thank you. Yes, just for those that don't realise, both Councillor Skinner and myself are on the sewerage business unit, joined by two councillors from TDC as well. And yes, that is something that we are actively pursuing. For those of you that are really, really interested what happens at Bells Island, page 142 of your agenda has got a drawing as to what occurs. But for those of you like me that are absolutely intrigued by what happens out there, for those that might want to make a visit, and the invitation is extended to any councillors, we're more than happy to make sure that you'd be welcome out there. With a vehicle load of councillors would be great, because it's out of sight to a lot of people, but it's an essential activity, and there is a lot going on, and there's a lot of outside interest in what occurs there. And until I was a councillor, I really looked down on it from where we live and really didn't know much about it. And a similar activity occurs at Nelson North from the wastewater treatment plant out there. So that opportunity and invite is there for any of you that would like to get out there at a suitable time for all. Thank you. Is there any further queries, questions of Mr. Clifford? Okay, so there's no further queries. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've since the privilege of being on this committee, the aspirations are very high and they are very genuine. What Don is mentioning there, and it does align over and above what NCC aspirations were. I know there was a concern about whether they match, but no, I very much compliment both the staff and the stakeholders and the TDC councillors on that committee, because when questioning on what we're doing, that's very clear in the report. It's already being done. It's already in the mind of those to aspire to that. So the environmental side of it, I've been very impressed, and we've quizzed it pretty hard. I know you and I have been a great learning curve on that, and actually been very much enjoying being on that committee, beyond what I probably thought I would. But no, very much, it's not just lip service. What I'm saying is what they're doing, or what we are doing, is so much so that it's an example to many of the other councils around the country when they're seeing how we're doing it from a more biological perspective or on a mechanical perspective. This is usually a great example. So no, thank you very much. It's been a genuine effort, and some fruits are still coming through.
All right, thank you. So I would like to move the recommendation as listed. Do we have a seconder for that?
Sure, please.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Rutledge. Any further debate? No further questions? Debate? Thank you. I will put it then. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Now we go to item 9. Mr Levers.
Through the chair, yes. Mr. Andrew Bishop is unfortunately not here to speak to the report, but Mr. Don Clifford will be able to answer any questions. This report is self-explanatory. The auditor of the 2 business units has questioned the need and cost benefit of having an annual report and accounts audited. And the recommendation is that the terms of reference in the MOU for the 2 business units respectively reflect that we don't need those, and that has been approved by both the committees.
Right, thank you. Any queries? Councillor Noonan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a clarification, this is an existing MOU with some alterations for audit purposes, is that right?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay, that's not how it reads, but that's fine. I'm just clarifying, because it looks like if you didn't know better, you'd think it was a new one. It doesn't say that it's just, in the purpose of the report, it doesn't say it's just to change the, it looks like it's a new one, if you know what I mean.
Okay. Yeah, the alterations are highlighted.
Yes. So if we go to number 1, which is the purpose of the report, it says it's to receive a memorandum of understanding and to recommend that councils approve it. So it actually isn't, is it? It's actually a report altering the existing memorandum of understanding to include an audit requirement. Right. I just wanted to be absolutely perfectly clear.
Yes.
Thank you. In that case, I'm happy to move.
All right, do we have a seconder? I will second it then. Any further comment, discussion? No, so I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So we now go to item 10 for public excluded. Would someone like to move that we go into public excluded for the reasons stated on page 5? All right, we have moved and seconded. Councillor Noonan. So we now move into public excluded. And we thank the youth councillors for their attendance.